What do you see when you're in the dark?
Hello and welcome back to Buried Stories. I'm Jeff Mercurio, along with me, Wendell Brown, and we got Steve Mercurio joining us as well. First of all, I'd like to wish a Merry Christmas to all of you, and a Happy New Year. We were gone for this holiday season, so we're getting right back into it. So, welcome, and how are you, Wendell?
I'm fine, Jeff. Merry Christmas to you and
Merry
yours,
Christmas to
and
you.
Happy New Year to you and yours, Steve. Ditto. Um,
Merry Christmas, Happy
Hope
New Year.
everybody had a safe holiday season and enjoyed it. And good to be back. Missed you guys. Uh, so we'll get to philosophize a little bit.
Well, tonight, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to talk about the Djinn and the Watchers. The Djinn and the Watchers. It's always been said if you start talking about the Djinn, they start paying attention to you. So I don't know if we're going to rattle some cages or open up some doors, but here we go. So the Djinn, Wendell, give us a little bit about the history of the Djinn.
Well, the Djinn, as far as, and I'm sure Steve has a lot of input on them too, but from what I know about them, the little bit I do know about them is what they're known for is they're masters of the wind. Every time you say Djinn, I think of genies. So genies, Djinn, similar, not the same, but similar. Um, usually they're portrayed as muscular, fiendish looking things, but oddly, they're also known for liking mortals. They like to play, and they're mischievous, and they think mortals, they actually, when mortals get entangled with them, as far as legends go and myth goes with it, when a mortal gets entangled with a Djinn, the Djinn is very protective because they come from a angle of servitude. If you understand, they really, and again, when I say this is what I have collected from on them. They, they don't like, they're they lean towards servitude in every aspect, even them serving, but they don't like to be, pardon the pun, bottled up, imprisoned, that kind of thing. So, over the years, I haven't dealt with the Djinn, but I've dealt with the topic of Djinn a lot, especially in my Dungeons and Dragons days. Djinns were really big, and and similar to genies, I think of them as a genie on steroids kind of thing. Now, the one thing with the Djinn is that, they can do the wish granting, the 1 to 3 wishes kind of thing. And they're partial to their servants that, like I said, people they get entangled with. Where they do get very devilish is on the topic, and Steve and I talked about this just for a quick second, is betrayal by mortals. It's like the worst thing that could happen to them. And the only way that they can erase the betrayal is pretty much death vengeance. And I think that's, you see them portrayed in movies and things as mischievous, as far as you ask for 3 wishes and they're going to screw up every wish. They're going to circle it around on you somehow. And I don't know now. There was, help me out, Jeff, as far as one of the great rulers in biblical times was rumored to have the help of a Djinn, and that's how he conquered Babylon or something, and that's how his armies succeeded, was in the service of a Djinn. So it
You're
even
talking
has,
about,
you know what I'm
I
talking about?
apologize,
It's
King
Islamic.
Solomon?
Yeah, it's Islam. Yeah, it was a Solomon temple. Yeah, it was Solomon. Yeah.
Yeah, King
And,
Solomon.
so, so it's even creeped into our biblical stories as far as the jinn existing. Now, on a practical matter, as you know, 2026 is here now. Do I think jinn are running around? I've never seen them. I haven't heard of anybody ever dealing with a jinn. Actually, that would be a little more awesome than a lot of the other topics we see if I ever talk to anybody that has dealt with a jinn.
Right.
Probably the closest thing in my time has been your story about the demonic figure at the end of your bed. Um, that I was thinking jinn then when you said that. Um, but then you'd be leaning towards the demonic side, and I don't know that that's so accurate as far as the jinn. But powerful elemental entities is what they're rumored to be, and they're a lot bigger in the Middle East and the Islamic faith than over here in Western civilization.
Gotcha.
I mean, we make good movies out of them, but that's it. Um, But, you know, it's sorta like we were talking about demons and things, and Steve mentioned if you knock on the door, then, you might not want them to answer because
Right.
I think, from what I read about them, that once you do hook up with them, um, there's a servant-master relationship, and, you know, probably
And
not
I've
a good
heard,
thing.
and correct me if I'm wrong, but I've heard they're neither good nor bad.
Well, that's kinda how I took it too. They like I said, from what I read, they like mortals because they think we're fun. They think we're fun, you know, we're entertaining.
Gotcha.
Um, but they're much superior
Right.
to us in in our in existence terms, you know, they're immortal and all that. Um, but haven't ever heard anybody that's ever encountered one, talked to one, knows how to get one. Um, besides the genie in the bottle. You know, like I said, they're masters of the wind. They come and go with the wind. Um, and I'm not even sure what would interest them in bringing them about. It would almost be just circumstantial, you know, run across something. I don't know, run across the lamp. Um,
Either that
or
or some form of sorcery.
yeah, but what I got was
Mysticism.
everything is servitude with them. So they're
Right.
either serving or they're served, and and they'll do either one.
Gotcha.
Depending.
Steve, your thoughts on the gin and what do you know about the gin?
Well, I'm definitely no specialist. It's out of all the years of working or kind of exploring a little bit here and there of the paranormal, the jinn are usually not brought up in good terms. And I don't mean like that makes them good or evil. I think you guys touched on it. They can choose, they have that free will. Okay. And yes, I would agree with you, Wendell. They're essentially kind of associated with humanity of sorts. The first thing that kind of came up when you kind of look up the jinn is that they're born from smokeless fire.
Yeah.
That came up a couple times, and I kind of wish I knew a little bit better, where the history of that notion came up because I think that that's pretty interesting. But I've always understood them to be, as you guys stated, kind of an elemental, which means I would say theoretically that could put them here well before humanity. One could say potentially at the beginning of Earth, or maybe even earlier if you go back. When I was doing a little bit of dabbling in the subject, it was talking about how it came pre-Islam. Like it was in their ideology centuries before Islam even became, so it was already in the Middle East kind of notion, or stories being told. The same way you'd hear about the fairies or the fae people, right? I mean, essentially, it goes back, dates back. I gotta be honest with you though, guys. Like I was telling you before the show, Wendell, the very term Djinn, it makes me nervous. Honestly, it's weird because there's not that much that I could talk about in paranormal that would actually make me nervous, and the Djinn is definitely one of them.
Do you,
Absolutely.
do you think, from my understanding, I think different cultures make them a bigger deal and are able to summon them, Jeff. Different cultures, different face. Even the one where the Solomon incident, they needed help and they summoned a Djinn. Um, so, not real strong in our Western culture, but I think there are some cultures where they actually know how the appropriate way to summon a Djinn. And I'm like Steve, I don't know that I want to be there when they do.
Well, yeah, going back to what you were talking about, you had mentioned like wishes, right? Wendell, you had mentioned wishes here and there, and that kind of brings them back to that whole genie theory. But what's interesting about the whole wishing upon wishes, and you were talking about how the wishes would go incorrect, and I think that that is actually by design because, look, not that if I had, I guess that would bring up a good question for all of us. If you actually had access to a genie, would you use it? Because obviously, as humanity, it's power, anything you want to make happen. But the problem is that you have to be very precise. And even then, the lack of words or the overuse of words could actually come back to haunt you in that wish. And I think if you go down that road, that's kind of the trickster element, I guess, that I would say about Jinn is that it's not so much that they're trying to ruin your life. It's more of if you're going to take this path and you're going to make those choices, proceed A with caution and B understand that you calling something forth. You may not get exactly what you want. You may think you know what you want, but at the same time, based on your word, like I said, your use of words or lack of words or description or whatnot, you're going to get what it is that they produce. And when you say, well, I didn't ask for that, I would assume they could play back your words and say, no, this is exactly what you asked for. And then you kind of start going down an element of, well, how do I fix this? And let's say you have 3 wishes. You make your first one, it's all messed up because you didn't ask for it correctly or whatever it is, right? Then your next one, you're trying to think about how to correct this one because clearly, and then now you got to go down that whole, how do I exactly say this with no, you know what I mean? So I think it's more of a consequence theory, right? And one could say that maybe Jinn get some entertainment out of the consequences or you not getting what you thought you wanted out of this, right? Like there's that whole element there. And I think that that's where it comes in to whether there could be good, bad, indifferent. Use this
Well,
as, yeah.
yeah, and from what I looked at, genies and Djinn are different. Genies are the traditional 3 wishes. Hope I don't screw them up in my verbiage, which they will make you do it. The Djinn, from what I understand, is more of a partnership. It's more of a servitude partnership that a return is expected on both ends, the Djinn's end and your end. And the Djinn get partial to the people that are in servitude agreements with them, I will say, or contracts, because they protect them like a pet. And that's why if the pet gets strange in any way with the wishes, whatever they may be, um, and maybe the Djinn just wants praise and you want riches. And you have your riches, and then all of a sudden it goes to your head and you start acting different. Sort of like your friend, that, we were buddies until he got money. And now he's just not the same. Well, the Djinn, from what I understand, it's an agreement where the Djinn get that way, but you're not dealing with a friend. You're dealing with an immortal, and you just don't want to get to the bridge of betraying them. But and there's also something that comes back to the imprisonment. Like I told you, um, Jeff, if I had a wish, I'd want the powers of a genie. But with that comes the imprisonment, which is, probably the only thing that keeps these kind of entities in check if they were to exist, or they do, is the imprisonment aspect of it. And so, maybe on the Jinn side, freedom. That's his what he gets out of it. What do you want? And, and then there's a relationship. But there is a difference. I did denote that there is a difference between the genies, where you rub the bottle and get the 3 wishes and go on your merry way, and a Jinn. A Jinn is more of a partnership that you're pulling forward, and I think the claws go deeper in you if you're dealing with a Jinn.
Right.
You know what's interesting now with that, the Wendell, is that I'm sure, like you said, I'm sure there are the differences between them too, but I think from a Western aspect, we always kind of think of them as the kind of the genie in the bottle, or and going back to what you're saying, Wendell, if you think about it in a weird way, it's about the perspective of such, like the Western world kind of looking at it as potential. Because one of the main things that comes up if you Google Jinn or you start looking at there's always this reference to the genies, right? There's always, or a connection, or so I think what you're talking about, Wendell, is very much connected. Although we have westernized that theme, I think the original understanding of potentially maybe what a genie would be, there's still that kind of give and take of it, right? There's still that mischievous element to the whole genie, even though they're essentially a servant, right? It's for a certain amount of time. It's for a give and take, and it's kind of still in a weird way, kind of an agreement between you and them. And like you said, there's a give and take. So there's an expectation that they're going to be receiving something at the same time as maybe giving. And so I agree. I would agree. There's clearly probably some differences. I think it's really just the perception or the element or the thought of what this is. You know what I mean? Is
Yeah,
that from our perspective, we kind of start thinking that direction. But I agree with what you're saying as well, is that there clearly is a difference. And I bet if you were to maybe head over to more of the Middle East, you'd probably they might not think of it as much of a genie as they probably think of it, since the idea kind of essentially started there, you know?
I don't think it can end well.
I
From
don't think
what
it ever does.
I don't think it can end well because, like I said, that analogy, once you summon a Jinn. Now, there are certain cultures that probably know how to do it the right way and end it and all that, and be done with whatever episode you're dealing with. But from what I was taken from it, it is that if you were to summon a Jinn, it's almost like having a friend that won't go away. You understand what I'm talking about? And I don't think it ends well, and I think the betrayal part, why that's such a big deal with them, is because it eventually has to come to that. Eventually, you gotta I'm sure, "Okay, enough, go away," and that's betrayal, that kinda thing.
Yeah. Yeah,
I
I
I
could see
I
that.
don't see it ending well if you were to summon a Jinn.
I would agree. You know what? Honestly, Wendell, I would honestly say the same thing about a genie, right? Like, because you think about the power that comes with, even if you only had one wish, I think whatever it is, and you could have the greatest of intentions, right? You could have literally a saint's perspective on what it is that I want to feed all the people, I want to help the poor, whatever it is. I think almost anything you were to wish for or ask for isn't going to result in what you conceived
How
in your
you picture
mind
it.
as the end result. So I think no matter what, there's kind of it's not going to end well.
I think the closest thing we have in our culture is a deal with the devil.
Yeah,
It's
in a sense.
eternal servitude,
Yeah, who's the
and you just
guitar
don't live.
player? The Crossroads?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the yeah. Yeah.
Now, as far as the Islamic religion goes, the jinn is mentioned in there. And in the Quran, it's got a whole chapter, and their chapters in the Quran are called surahs. They got a surah called Al Jinn. It's a whole chapter just about the jinn. And from what I was reading about, I think there's up to 72 different jinn. All
Yeah,
right.
have you heard of you ever heard of Deo? DAO?
Yeah. Yeah.
Deo and Ifritis? Different type
Yeah.
jinns?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
supposedly they don't like each other. But go ahead.
well, they got free will. They are alongside humans and angels. They're below angels, they're above humans and stuff. So they got the free will to either be good or bad according to Islamic religion. And they're shapeshifters. They can come at you as animals, as another person, as a cat. So they do shapeshift. And the one thing that I don't know the significance of the smokeless fire and where that plays into. So, but they do. The good ones can help you out, but the bad ones, it can get as bad as a jinn called Iblis, which in Islamic religion is Satan. So, I mean, you're right. If you come across one, I guess, depending on which one you get, it's either gonna go okay or it's not gonna end well
Do
for
you
you.
think jinn are just misunderstood demons or devils that what we would call demons and devils?
Now, are you asking
I'm asking you. It would
opinions? Okay.
yeah, it would
Uh,
yeah, I don't know what he I mean, the way I look at jinns is it's a Middle Eastern genie, demon, but not evil, as Steve said, necessarily. Depends on which one you get. But, but an elemental, a different, um, immortal that's always been here, is always gonna be here, just not on our plane of existence. And, but you can call them into our plane of existence from their plane. Um, is that how you I'm interested, Jeff. I'm just trying to learn.
right,
I'm
right.
interested in what you think, um, because you have a little more verse stuff on the angels and the demons and their different levels. What do you think? How do you see a jinn?
I think it's their interpretation of angels and demons because, like I said, you get good ones and you could get bad ones. Well, in angelology and demonology, you get good ones and you can get bad ones. They could either be like you've heard of stories of people that get in car wrecks and they're pulled out by a guy, and all of a sudden they turn and the guy's gone. Or your house is damn near haunted, where things are rattling and breaking and stuff like that. And to me, it's just their interpretation of what angels and demons are.
So do you think there's just a set group? If you think in strata of things, there's us on this material plane. Then there's an elemental plane, and that's where these demons and angels, jinn, genie, whatever else, ghost, hang out. Not I'm making light of it, but I'm saying where they exist and can be brought through the veil between planes. Is that what you're thinking? That it's just one group of subjects or entities that we just call them different things based on our culture?
Yeah, that's what I think. I mean, and it goes across all cultures. The Asian cultures have the same things where they got spirits that are good and spirits that are bad. And it all comes down to like what your upbringing is and what culture you believe in. It's just to me, it's just a different name for angels and demons.
Interesting.
That is interesting. We'll talk a little more on this. I'll get you to stretch it a little
Well,
further, but you had
well,
something on watchers, and I'm interested because I think
well.
we're getting into that.
Before we get into the watchers, one more thing is that these things can come in and out of our planes just like that. And I don't, like I said, I don't exactly know where the smokeless fire is or what that interpretation means, but that's the same thing with
Steve's right. That's big.
yeah,
That's how a jinn is born.
right. And
Smokeless,
that's
yeah, smokeless
either
fire.
like angels and demons. We talk about that. They appear out of nowhere and then they disappear. So it's kind of, to me, their interpretation.
It just kind of out of theory. if we're taking a look at it, a perspective, we go back and we look at ancient aliens, right? You always, I love how that show kind of expands on these different theories, these carvings, and I'm not the greatest person to watch it. I've seen several shows and whatnot, but can one possibly think that maybe, let's say you're seeing the rear of a spaceship, okay? Clearly, you're seeing potentially like something that looks like a fire, but maybe you're not like it's not burning as such. Like you would see smoke coming from the rear of a ship, right? You'd see the acceleration potentially if it's whatever color it's pushing out or accelerating. We've seen over the years with blue and orange and all that, right? But if you're somebody from thousands of years ago and you have absolutely no idea what this is, can one interpret that? Because we've talked about angels and demons and early aliens, right? We've already had some of those shows where we've kind of discussed that same concept. Could that concept with the smokeless fire, could that be kind of maybe what this is? You're seeing a fire on some sort of ship, but you're not really seeing smoke. And guess what? One showing up. So that could also be like a determination of something being born as suddenly it's here. It's born
Right.
from smokeless fire. I don't know. I'm just spitballing here.
Yeah,
All right.
I would lean towards bright light that looks like fire, maybe. That they something like that. But
If you go back to, I guess, the ancient Middle East, and the Jews were all over the place. Now, during that time, a lot of the Jews, they didn't have Bibles, they didn't have this or that. So a lot of the stuff was spread word of mouth. Now, Mohammed, I guess, I don't know how far I'll go into Muhammad. Anyway,
Understood.
but so they picked up on bits and pieces of what the Jews were talking about. And you go back to Moses or Abraham. I'm sorry, Abraham. This bush is burning. There's no smoke coming out of it, and it's
I was going to ask
talking.
you about that.
Right.
That
And
bush.
that
Did
could
the
be
bush
the
have smoke?
origin. Right. And since they're hearing this, and I don't know how much the Jewish people were going to elaborate on it. Did something come out of it? Who knows back then? Anyway, what I'm saying is this bush is burning. It's not giving off any smoke, yet it's speaking. That could be their interpretation of the Jinn being born out of smokeless fire.
That's an interesting concept as well.
Right, right.
I was going to ask you if the bush was smoking or not. That's the first thing
No,
that
it's
came to my mind as well, is that
right.
story,
Smokeless fire. And when something comes into your realm, I don't know if there's a flash of light. That could be it too. Or like, sometimes you see in movies and stuff, if you go interdimensional, there's a spark of blue and like going through a different dimension. That could be it too.
So like a pop.
Yeah,
I've heard that too. Like
right.
something either exiting this plane of existence or coming into it potentially could create what you're talking about, flashes of color.
Right.
Temperature would be, they always talk about colder,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And also what you said, there's almost like could be like almost like a pop sound,
So my closest interpretation about this smokeless fire, I would go back to, and this is just me, is they heard something about a burning bush on top of a mountain with no smoke coming from it and voices coming out of it, and they went with it. And to me, that's where the Jinn was born. Now, people out there listening, if you disagree, please leave a comment below and set me straight.
yeah, I'm thinking there's some scholars out there that said that
Yeah, they're
that there's
probably
a
going, oh,
there's a whole nother continent of information that these guys need to
yeah,
hear.
yeah. Right, right.
But
You know what?
well, we know.
And I'll leave it at this, honestly. Like I said, I think it's one of those subjects that, whether you believe or not, wherever it came from, right? I think it, because to me, look, it's not for me to ask whether it's real or not, okay? It's one of those things that I've always just given respect to, but from a distance, right? Like, I mean, of course, I'd love to see an alligator, but I definitely don't want to see them close, right? Like, it clearly looks like an amazing animal in its own world, and it's, but it doesn't mean that I want to go anywhere near it, right? I respect it from afar. I think there's many things, as we're going to touch on watchers. I think it's one of those things that if you believe in elementals, right? There's this. I listened to a gentleman named Dave Schrader talk about going over and spending time in Ireland. And he talked about how the bus that they were riding around this bus going checking out different haunted locations. And they came across this like area on the road where suddenly the car pulls over, the bus pulls over. And Dave's asking the driver, like, what are we doing here? And they're like, oh, we got to get out to pay respect to the Fae. And Dave's sitting there going, are you kidding me? And they were dead serious. They're like, no, you don't cross this threshold without stopping and leaving something of yourself. Could be a hair, could be a coin, could be something, but something that represents you. And it was weird because the person's like, do you really want to take the risk of like not leaving it? You know what I mean? And at the end of the day, he felt compelled, like not because they were saying it. He just kind of like, wow, first of all, it surprised him that they're taking this concept that clearly, but to them, it meant the world. So I
Oh,
kind
yeah.
of look at the Djinn that way, right? Like you said, could be evil, could be good. All these stories that this culminates from. At the end of the day, I got to tell you, I respect it, and I try not, like I said, I try never to knock on that door. I bless them and do your thing, right? Just
Yeah.
it's just a weird, scary concept.
All right. Well, that's it for the Djinn as far as we go. So let's move on to the Watchers. The Watchers is very interesting to me. Because I mean, I read the Bible a lot, and the Watchers, it's something I've looked into before, but I've dove a little deeper now. So the Watchers were mainly brought up in the book of Enoch. You guys familiar with that?
I've heard the term.
Right.
Yes, I
And
am.
all right, and the book of Enoch is an apocryphal book. And the apocryphal book, there's plenty of them. These are books written that are not canonized in the Bible. Do they got significant? Uh, yes, they do, because of the thinking at that certain time. So, in the book of Enoch, the Watchers were angels that were sent by God to come down and oversee humanity. All right. And there was no real barrier. They wanted to see humanity develop. And some of the Watchers, they weren't supposed to cross the threshold of interfering with humanity. And the Watchers in the book of Enoch, some of them interfered with humanity. They descended to Earth, all right, and they found that the human women were strikingly beautiful, and frankly, I don't blame them. There's some strikingly beautiful human women. Anyway, they exchanged knowledge for like to some of these people, to have relations with their women and stuff. And a lot of the stuff that they taught is pretty astronomical. They taught metallurgy and weapons, because we went from sticks and stones to swords, spears, bows, arrows in a flash, and it's kind of weird. They taught astronomy and astrology, so the signs from heavens, and all of a sudden we know the patterns of how the planets rotate around the sun, so we could tell spring, and constellations. They also taught sorcery and enchantments. Now, that kind of goes back to the Djinn with the sorcery and enchantments of conjuring up these things. Plus, sorcery and enchantments is also all right. I want this land over here, but so and so's got this land. I could do some enchantments and you know put a curse on this guy, and he falls away, and I have the land. They also taught cosmetics and manipulation. So you go back to the Egyptians, and the Egyptians, if you look back at the queens and even the men, very sophisticated, like makeup and how to do this stuff, because blue was a very hard color back then to get. You had to crush a, a bunch of shells, seashells, to get this blue dye. So who taught them that? I don't know. But they're, and then they had these offspring with these women, and their offspring were called the Nephilim. Are you guys familiar with the Nephilim?
Yeah.
All right. So, what is your understanding of the Nephilim, Steve?
It kind of talks about what you were talking about, Jeff, which was that the angels were never supposed to cross over into humanity. They were never supposed to be a part of us, but as you stated, they did, and they conceived children that were never supposed to be half angels, half humans. Uh, some, if I understand this correctly, some theorize that they were the early giants. They talk about
That's what I was
giants in the
thinking.
Bible and everything. And to my knowledge, I mean, you would know more about the Bible, but um, I don't know where giants come into the Bible. But the concept is that's a possibility, is that the Nephilim were giants because of the crossbreeding between the two.
Yeah, you
Now,
talking about the giants and like the demigods that a lot of the myths are
well,
based on?
they were known
Potentially.
as the men of renown, is what they're used in the Bible, is the men of renown, which were giants. And these giants, there's actually depictions in the Bible that some of these kings, after they conquered them, just the size of the beds of the king. And we're talking now, I don't know what a regular cubit is, but they're talking massive cubits, all right? And when the Jews sent out spies to overtake I believe it was Canaan, they looked over the side of a mountain that said, "We look like grasshoppers to these people." So the giants. But the thing about the Nephilim is Nephilim in Hebrew is Nephal, okay? And the fall means to fall. So that's where we might get fallen angels, causing mankind to fall. So there's plenty of falls here, fallen angels, man falling. So the Nephilim is kind of related to giants as far as like everybody knows out there. And it also is interpreted as giants. So that's where we get the giants. And the ones that angels that crossed over the threshold, they caused so much chaos, and this was all pre-Noah's flood. This was all pre-flood of any of the traditions, that you go back even to the Chinese, because everybody's got a flood. And when every like tradition has a flood, it's not a coincidence. This happened. As long as far as I know, but that's when they try to wipe out as many and try to find one righteous man to start this all over again. But the thing about the Nephilim is, these were half angels, half humans, so you could drown them, but their spirit's still around. So what's your take on the Watchers so far?
Well, mine is like you say, angels and demons. I mean, this one's a little tougher for me. And jinns are tough for me too. I mean, to believe in, and you know, it's a good legend. It's a good myth. Um, I think there's good and evil. This is my opinion. I think there's basically good and evil. And I
Right.
know there's something bigger than us. I know that for a fact. If you ever owned your own business, you'll know it. But there's something bigger than us. And I think there's a basic good and evil in everything. You see it in almost everything that exists. There's a good and evil. There's good things that, you know, drugs that come along that are awesome, but there's an evil side to them somehow. Um, you know, they can cure things, but they can kill you too.
Right, right.
So I do believe there's something bigger than us. I actually really do believe in angels and demons. I think you can summon demons. You can summon, but when I say that, you can summon evil in whatever form your culture wants to call it. You can summon evil. And I wonder if that's pulling something out of the elemental realm, or if it's you try to summon something so strong that you become it in some way. But um, watchers, my concept is, yeah, they're here. They're always going to be here. They always have been here. As far as, like you said, them dipping down and getting into our societies and stuff, the way I look at it is that we're here for 70 years. You really want to waste your time down here messing with us I mean, we're here for 70 years and we're gone to the next thing. So it's hard for me from a practical standpoint to say this stuff is just absolutely real all the time, but I do truly believe that there is goodness and evil that you can bring into our reality. I don't know that it comes walking in as a 10-foot, 9-foot, 10-foot man or woman. I don't know that. But I come from more of the standpoint of sort of like The Secret, Jeff, if you're familiar with that. That we are part of a universe and we're all connected, and the universe will shape itself in whatever your mind is thinking, wanting, feeling, and I think you can bring this goodness in as angels, and we see it as guardian angels type activity, or you can bring in a demon and you can bring chaos and war and things in. So I don't know. As far as watchers, Jeff, I believe in angels. I believe in demons. I believe in good and evil. If you want to call them watchers, that's fine. But I much more than that, I'm not knowledgeable enough about it to say, yeah, there's watchers and there's this class that does this or that, or has done this or hasn't.
Geez, Steve, so far touching on the Watchers.
Well, you know, I I've often heard that the purpose of humanity or for us to come and be a part of this world is to learn lessons, life lessons. I often wonder about the theory that we keep coming back until we get it right. That each time we're sent down here, we're sent to learn lessons in order to essentially move on. In a weird way, kind of like a college classroom but live, right? Like a life classroom, right? So some people may be down here to learn how to be better caregivers, or some people may, whatever lessons we may have signed up for in the afterlife, we're coming down here. So it potentially, if that theory were to be real, that we're coming down, well, obviously you need teachers. Now, you don't often need teachers that have to actually be there in person, but you would potentially need instructors or class participants or something to kind of potentially make some of these lessons real for people in order to send them on to raise to a higher frequency to get closer to God, right? I mean, if you theorize, or if you kind of dabble in that thought process, that's why we keep coming back in different lives, but it's always to learn, right? Could the watchers be those, could angels and watchers or spirit guides or whatever we want to, could they be essentially like those college professors? They've always been here. You don't see them because we are not meant to, because if they interfere too much in our world, then we can't learn the lessons that we're supposed to learn while we're down here. I think part of that whole learning process is you have to do it on your own, right? Like they say to an alcoholic, you're never going to tell an alcoholic to stop drinking. You could tell them a million times, but until the alcoholic determines, I need to change my life, it isn't going to happen until they bring that forth, right? So in that essence, when you're talking about watchers or whatever positions they may be playing, you're not meant to see them. You're not meant to dabble, although they're participating in your life. They're doing it from a different plane, but yet bring forth those educational lessons that you need to move on to a higher realm, a higher frequency. I mean, I kind of look at it that, or another way of looking at it is, you often hear Native Americans, if you're watching the watchers are kind of the guardians of this classroom per se. They're the guardians of this world, this earth, right? Could they be kind of like what the Native Americans talk about, the wind spirit, or, we talk about Mother Nature in Western world, but I feel like, that's probably in other traditions broken down, like you were talking about the Djinn masters of the wind. Maybe the watchers are, masters of the trees, masters of earth, masters of water, masters of, there's so many different perspectives you can take on this, but ultimately I think it's the whole guardian theme, the whole preservation. Are they preserving humanity? Were they here before us? And maybe they're here to preserve the classroom itself, the earth itself, and we're just a temporary classroom in a long string of even future generations that may not even be human.
Do you think
You know
you've
what I
ever
mean?
encountered one?
I don't think a watcher, no, Wendell. Do I think I might have come across an angel of sorts, or maybe a spirit guide? Yeah, I mean, I would assume that I probably have. At some point, I do think that, I would tell you right here, I definitely think Jeff has, whether he believes it or not.
Have
And I'm
you,
not
Jeff?
just talking about his demonic sight. I'm also talking about, maybe some of his accidents, or him falling asleep with a snowdrift on him and not getting, you know what I mean? There's been times in his life where one could clearly argue something of a higher being helped him out.
Jeff, do you think you've encountered one?
That I can't really tell you yes or no
I can tell
on
you for
that.
sure I have.
You have?
Yeah, I was pulled up by my bootstraps at one point in my life. I know there's something bigger than us. I pray to him every
Oh
day.
yeah. Oh yeah.
I
Yeah.
call it God, uh, but it could have been his emissary that, was down there looking out for me. But I know for a fact. I felt it. I literally felt it. And so don't know if I call it a watcher, but yeah. So I just curious to see if you've encountered it, because I have no doubt there's, and just on a side note, one of Wendell's babbles. Beside the question of whether we're alone in the universe, you know what my number 2 question is? What the hell was going on before I was born? Because obviously they had video, because I see it, and I wasn't here. How dare them live without me being around? But where was I? I want to know that. So if you guys can help me get there in through these episodes, then we've done something. But I want to know where the hell I was before I was born, because obviously life was normal here, and I wasn't here, which blows my mind. But that's Wendell's side note for the night. There you go, Jeff. Take it away.
Gotcha. All right, getting back to the Watchers, as far as like our Bible that I study, it's mentioned one time in the Bible as far as Watchers go, and it was Nebuchadnezzar during one of his dreams. Nebuchadnezzar was the king of Egypt at that time, and he said, "I was looking, and behold." Let me find it here again real quick. Oh, I saw in the vision of my head while on my bed, and there was a watcher, a holy one coming down from heaven. So he came down to oversee what God told him to do with Nebuchadnezzar. We can get into that at another time. So that was a messenger from God, overseeing that God's command was going to play out in human on earth as it was supposed to. Now, as far as other areas of watchers, the Zoroastrians and Mesopotamian parallels. Mesopotamian gods at that time called them the Anunnaki, who descended from the heavens. So the Anunnaki, and we've talked about the Anunnaki as far as like ancient aliens go. They bring up the Anunnaki quite often. And the Anunnaki were supposed to be spirits from somewhere else that dabbled in humanity, and some of them fell and they were imprisoned, just like the Watchers, the ones that overstepped their lines. They were chained up, and where were they put? In under the earth. So, as far as the Anunnaki come, that's the Mesopotamian theory on these Watchers, or their thought of what these angelic beings. And angel, by the way, isn't what they are. Angel is what they do. Angel means messenger. So you got groups of angels. You got the seraphim and you got the cherubim. Now we use angel to cover them all, but angels are messengers. So fallen angel is a fallen messenger that dabbled too much and corrupted humanity. No, the Zoroastrian watchers who guard cosmic order shared themes: divine oversight, rebellion, and punishment. So they gave out punishment, and that was the Zoroastrian look on these beings from a different time. And when you go into the Gnostic and the esoteric, Wendell, is where you get the archons. Archons were brought up with the Gnostic and esoteric interpretations. Entities manipulating humanity spiritually and materially. So again, you got them teaching man, some say hidden knowledge, because like I said, we went from sticks and stones to like modern warfare, and not all that length of a time, and just how to build. And
You get in the ghost realm on that last one, don't you?
what's that? As far as the archons?
You're getting close to the spirit and ghost realm,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. I mean, all of these things are outside of our vision until they want to be seen. And that's the ones that fell, that crossed the line because they interacted with humanity.
Well, until we figure it out with our dot connection here on these episodes that we do, like Steve is our paranormal expert and adventurer and goes out in the field and things, and what he brings back will bring us closer in that realm. What you're talking about, the spirits, the ghost, what elemental realm is going on there. The Anunnaki are actually interesting to me. It's pretty straight and simple to me. I could be totally off base, but Nibiru has that odd orbit that comes by Earth every 3,000 years or something.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
and it and not that I believe this, it just is logical to me from a standpoint of when the Earth and Nibiru get close together, like side by side in their orbits, the Nibiru basically jump over, come down, teach us shit, jump back, and go on their way on their planet. And that is, and it's logical to me because it makes a lot of sense with the Egyptian lore, the Egyptian history that we hear. But they can't just, they're not like space aliens where they can zip over, at the speed of light or anything. It's pretty logical. They have to be close in proximity to the Earth with Nibiru. And that's why Nibiru was such a big deal, what, in 2000 or something, when it was supposedly, we thought we knew when it was coming by. I don't think we have any idea. We could probably figure it out by going back in the ancient scrolls and stuff and figuring out what the timeline is on it. But because I think they've been here more than once. But that's the Anunnaki to me. When you say Anunnaki, I'm thinking these 9-foot guys coming over from Nibiru, coming down, teaching us new technology or getting whatever they need and then going away. But as far as spiritually, I never really heard the Anunnaki tied to spirits. But that's interesting to know that they are.
Is everybody familiar with Zachariah Sitchin?
I've heard the name for sure.
Right. And he supposedly studied a lot of the Sumerian writing and stuff like that, but his background was in economics, and then he said he was self-taught in Sumerian. I don't know how do you self-teach yourself a language that is long gone. So he got the word Anunnaki wrong. Anunnaki doesn't mean from the heavens, it means royal one. So it could have just been a king from the Sumerians that was called the Anunnaki. But I have heard, about them coming down, and it closely relates to the fallen angels again. They interfered with humanity. It got out of hand because there was giants in those times too, and they took off. And the Nibiru, when it got close, it caused a flood, and they saved a couple people to carry on life and try to get it back into existence. I got some names too from the Anunnakis and what they taught too. Let's see. As far as the like the head uh fallen angels, Sem Shemahiza. Shemahiza was the leader of the Watchers. He taught enchantments, root cutting, sorcery, and incantations. And he was supposed to organize the Watchers. Now, if you go through the enchantments and stuff like that, we're going through sorcery, root cutting, that's a medicinal. So it may even be hallucinogenics for all we know.
Steve,
And
he just summoned a Djinn. You know that we're screwed.
I hope not. I mean, he is throwing names out here, Wendell, that making me kind of
I'm holding
nervous.
on too, man. I'm holding on.
I'm
All right,
waiting for
Jeff.
him to say Shazam, and suddenly the genie behind him pops up.
All right, to the
I'm
universe.
just closing my. I'm getting out of here. I'm going
That's
to tell you
Jeff
right now.
Mercurio, Mercurio. Okay, go ahead.
No, there's only one Mercurio here talking
Yeah.
about this. Go ahead.
All right. The next one, second in command, Azazel. Steve, who's behind you? I'm just kidding.
Like I said, I'm getting a little nervous here. You know?
Azazel, he was second in command, and he was an infamous watcher. He taught metalworking, especially swords, knives, and shields, warfare, and violence. He taught cosmetic, makeup, and jewelry. All of a sudden, these people started adorning themselves, especially in Egypt. They were just in gold, and their eyes were done really well.
Jeff, hold your thought. I don't want to interrupt you and stop your thought. But do you ever think that when they talk about this, like swords and shields, why didn't he come up with an M16? Why? You know what I'm talking about? If it's divine inspiration, it is divine inspiration to the times. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And we're talking baby steps for these people.
Okay. All right.
So
Fair enough. I'll take it.
Right. And the art of deception and vanity. Now, if you talk about deception and vanity, to me, that sounds sort of like prostitution to me. I mean, these women adorning themselves, and they got this vanity going on, a man sees, and the art of deception. I'm going to get something out of you. I'll give you something, but I'm going to get something out of you. So that's the second in command. And I got so many other names that maybe we don't really have time to get into, but just a ton of names that, we'll get into maybe at some other point in time.
So bottom line.
Yeah.
Bottom line. from you.
All right. Well, bottom line, let's go into the modern day, what we're seeing in our time right now. All right. So we know some of the fallen angels were imprisoned and put into the earth. Okay. And where does some of these UAPs come out of?
Oh, the earth, the ocean.
Out of the earth, out of mountains and stuff like that. So, as far as like what the fallen angels did back then and what we see aliens doing now, or so-called aliens, is long-term surveillance. So that we've always heard they've been watching us for a long time. These nuclear facilities are being monitored, minimal direct communications. Did they talk to anybody? I don't know. And we probably couldn't understand their language if we tried. And there's no attempt to colonize the earth either by these things. And so we get, if we go down to the hybridization and genetic interest, again, remember we talked about the Nephilim being made through Watchers and what that turned out like. It wasn't good. We ended up with a flood. But these UAPs that take abduction, there's a lot of genetic sampling from these people, and there's genetic sampling from these animals that we see with cattle mutilations. And that's the hybridization theories that we got now. Human DNA as an object of interest. There's this, if they could twist the DNA, they could, shape us the way that they want to. There's always a reproductive and biological focus in encounters. You've heard that all of a sudden an abductee comes back and they're impregnated. So there's a lot of similarities across between of the old ancient writings and what we're seeing now.
You
And
know,
go ahead.
Steve said something that just has stuck with me ever since he said it. It was a couple episodes ago. I think it may have been on the last one. I don't recall. We're so famous and high producing. I don't remember what it was. A couple episode ago. Steve said that it's obvious the Earth, that everything around the Earth is meant to keep us on the Earth. You can't breathe in space. You explode if you go out there, unprotected, things like that. And it just rung a huge bell with me. And Jeff, I've told you ever since then, I've been obsessed with a certain topic, and my mind is open, and it's being just stuff coming in, and I'm sorting it out. But Steve kind of opened it up when he said, you look at the Earth and everything's against us. Everything's against us outside the Earth.
Right.
And it just raised a huge flag for me, like, da, hide in plain sight, duh, what are you thinking? And, we're like rats. I was talking to my sister about this. We're like rats in a cage on Earth, but we like our cage. And that's the question. That's a question on disclosure. That's a question on technology. Because when I say disclosure, the only disclosure that I want to hear is that we're not alone. That's disclosure. It's a whole nother thing when you start talking about what technology is out there and what's being shared and who's controlling it and should they release it. But my God, even though it could clean up the earth forever and it could make us be able to teleport from one place to another, basically, um, do you want to you do not want, I say no. I say no, you don't want to. I'm kind of on the bad guy side on this. We can't handle it. We can't even handle what we have so far. We kill each other. So if you could just teleport a nuke into the opposing government's capital, no, I don't want everybody to be able to do that. And, but we're rats in a cage, but we like our cage. We like our construct. Now, I like my construct because I'm who I am. I'm living the life that I'm living, and I like it. I like my routine. I like you guys. I like getting to talk to you guys. I like, being able to, but if I was, this kind of talks about before I was born, what I was doing before I was born. But if I was in Somalia and worried about my next meal or guys coming down the street with guns, I wouldn't like my existence so much, you know? But that rat in that cage, it wouldn't like it. But I'm a rat that likes my situation. And I think as a whole, especially in the United States, in the free world, if you use other countries, we like our cage. We really do. But Jeff, you're tinkering on some of the biggest questions in the universe. Some of these things are, I truly believe, like you, they're watchers. They are. They're keeping us in our place. And 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 it's such a it's a no-win question if you get the answer, because if there's technology out there that can make our life easier, you don't want everybody to know it. You really don't. And then there's the question of who actually knows it. Should they know it? Should they be the ones holding it? I don't know, but maybe these watchers are trying to keep a balance, Jeff,
That
of some
could be.
sort. But because we're dangerously close to something,
Oh,
I
yeah, I
seriously
agree
think
with
that.
that.
And this is another episode, so I won't go any further as far as the spheres and the orbs and all that, and what I think they are. But I think you're dead on, Jeff. That um, the watchers are watching now more than ever.
And to go it even a little further, and I'll wrap it up, and then I'll get back to the Book of Enoch. As far as language, that was used in Enoch, and what whistleblowers are coming out saying on live TV and stuff. Ancient Watchers, Enoch, and related texts. Beings assigned to watch humanity. All right, and that's from the ancient text. Modern whistleblowers are coming out. There's evidence of non-human intelligence interacting with humanity. So that parallels ancient text descended from the heavens. Modern paraphrasing. Objects have been observed entering from high altitude in space. All right, not of earthly origin. Ancient text. Their origin is unknown and not attributable to any nation or human technology. Ancient text about watchers, they were observers, not rulers.
I agree.
Modern, they appear to monitor, not occupy or govern. So, I mean, these things, and we can go on and on. Created hybrid offspring. There are indications of biological interest through details, though details remain classified. So, I mean, I can keep going on and on verbatim with the ancient text and what modern people are saying, and it's the same thing, and it's incredible. All right, a couple more things that were talked about in the old bound or hidden from humanity. That was the old text. Information is deeply compartmentalized within legacy programs. Removed from public. Stigma and secrecy were intentionally cultivated to suppress discussion. So I think somebody knows something out there well within our government, and I don't know if you'll ever find out. But now let's get all the way back to the Book of Enoch and the Apocrypha. So during this research that I was doing on the fallen angels and stuff, and I probably didn't get a lot of this right. Again, you're free to comment if you're watching. Leave it below. I could take it. I'm thick-skinned. But anyway, the Book of Enoch, the second Book of Enoch, there was a part in the Old Testament where it ended with the prophets, and then the New Testament. It was called the 400 Years of Silence, and there's a more theological name for this. Does that mean that they were quiet? No, they kept writing. Now, these Jewish people were discussing, these higher up Jews were discussing of what to make from Genesis. Now, if you just read Genesis, because at that time you did have ancient writing, uh, and you hear there's Nephilim and stuff like that. So they were talking amongst each other and trying to debate and make sense of what they were reading. And that's where the book of Enoch comes in. And a lot of these angels were written down during that time. Now, it doesn't mean that they're all false or something, but they're canonical, so they're not in the Bible, but they are in the Ethiopian Bible. And I actually have an old Bible that has all the Apocrypha books that are in it. It's an old Catholic Bible. So is it for real? I don't know, because this wasn't written by Enoch. They used, the names of Enoch to give it authority. We don't know who wrote these books, any of these apocryphal books, because there's one called the Book of the Wisdom of Solomon. So with all that being said, I believe in angels and demons. I believe that the Apocrypha is not forbidden knowledge. It's what the Jewish people were trying to make from what they were reading from the past scripture, and trying to come up and make it make sense to them. And that's where we get a lot of the watchers. Now, as far as the other faiths around the world and stuff, I can't speak much on that. I can just speak on the Jewish tradition from what I've researched on that. So take that for what it's worth. But I do think that somebody's watching. They're always watching, and they can come in and out of existence here at any time.
Well, like you were saying, Jeff, I always throw back this is a totally another episode, so we're not going to spend a lot of time on it. I always throw back to you the religious context, because your roots are so much deeper than mine on the religious. I have my faith, and I'm perfectly sound and strong in my faith. But the thing about you're talking about people who bring up the watchers, and us talking about it in the UAP verbiage, UFO verbiage, and people look at you and they say you're doing the devil's work. And I understand where they're coming from. I understand the concept. The devil's got you. He's confusing you, and he's making you, think there's things out there, and our religion says this. This is what it is. Another story, another show, many roundtables to come. But I am so. I'll leave it where you left it on the watchers and what they are, demons and angels, and we've already voiced our belief in good and evil. But I think we have such an opportunity. Like Steve, like I said, he's our paranormal expert. Been seen more, done more, heard more than we could, and I think between the three of us and everybody else we get on the show, we might be able to bring some clarity to it. It may not be what you want, Jeff. May not be what I want. May not be what Steve thinks it is. But it maybe be some clarity of some sort. And I tell you what, man, I am super excited to do it. And like I said, Jeff, I have, dude, I am in an obsessed mode right now. So our future next show will probably need to be a roundtable with several contestants, because I need some other people's opinions. I need some people to bring me down to earth, and I need some people to say, yeah, you're okay. That sounds good. And I want to hear other people's opinions, because, dude, I think we're on to something. You were talking about the ancient writings and stuff. as much as I cherish that stuff, and like Steve said with his bus stopping to pay homage to the whatever's there, I pay homage to that, and I truly do. But I got 10 years left in this world, 20 years at the most, probably. Uh, I'm on a fast timeline. And we got 70 years as a total. It's a shame that we all didn't get together at 19 and do this, but we didn't. And so here we are. And I think you're right on, Jeff. I truly believe there's watchers. I think they have an objective. What it is, we could just only guess right now.
All
But
speculation.
but I tell you what, buddy, I am excited to continue, and no longer will we ever skip 2 weeks like we just did,
Right.
because
right.
I got too much shit rattling around in my brain that I need to,
That's
that I need to get out.
Yeah.
And Steve,
Yeah.
as much as you think you're a special guest, I think you're going to be part of the base element here, unless your paranormal show takes over and you're just not available. But
No, nothing's going on right now. And
but yeah,
You know,
take it
I would
away,
just-
Steve. I want to hear
I would
the
just
rest
like
of
to
yours, but that's
say-
my view.
No, I think it's wonderful, and I think we've touched. It's funny how through all of these episodes that we've touched, whether it had been aliens, whether it had been spirits, whether it's been angels and demons and the Nephilim and all of this, it's interesting, Jeff, as you were discussing some of the names of the Watchers, right, and what they were potentially written down to be responsible for or teachers of. It's amazing how you were talking about like human behaviors, right? Like human actions and human behaviors. It's amazing how humanity, we like to kind of sprout some of the bad things or good things that we might do as like something to be essentially taught, not only taught, but maybe something to inspire too, right? So, like the first terms we call alcohol spirits, right? I mean, in the past that has come, we could sit here and have a whole show on why alcohol is called spirits, right? Because there is not only a religious part of it, there's a lore to it. There's so and it's amazing. I guarantee you, you probably have a name of the Watchers on that list that taught how to make alcohol. I mean, I would assume you'd get down far enough on that list and get there. And alcohol could be used for good, right? It could help start fires. It could, and that could be good too. Obviously, if you're an ancient farmer and you need to burn the land in order to plant the next crop, but at the same time, and then it could cure people. You could use it to clean out wounds, but at the same time, you could also use it to go on spiritual journeys, and then you could also do a lot of bad with it, right? So all of these kind of themes that go along between the aliens and the Watchers and I think it's amazing. And ultimately, the other thing that you guys had touched on was almost every, whether it be an ancient faith, a current faith, or just an ancient war, Native Americans, all the way through. You can go down to the Aborigines of Australia. You're going to find so many similar themes to the Watchers. So, and you're talking about civilizations that before the invent of really, truly international travel, whatever that thousands of years ago that started, these civilizations were around before that and had similar themes and had never even talked to this other civilization before.
Right.
So it's kind of interesting to see that. So is that more of like a brain sprouted idea that we feel watched, that we feel something higher than us? Or is that something that had come from coming here, being born here, or something that had it superimposed from our prior existence? So if we truly are being sprouted, you guys had mentioned the Nephilim, and today the term I hear, not so much the Nephilim, but the cross hybridization of humans and aliens. I believe they're called like star seeds now, right? Like, isn't that one of the Yeah, yeah. Some
Yeah.
people claim that they're star seeds, that they're,
I know.
so
Yeah.
I think that, yes, there's truly something watching. Whether you think it's an angelic, a different plane of existence, or maybe it's our existence, our plane, but something technology has brought a different civilization. Regardless what it is, there's definitely some watching going on, some monitoring of sorts, to
Right.
whether to make sure we're good, whether to make sure, maybe some of them want to see us do bad things, right? So, I definitely think that there's wherever these themes are coming from. That's my question. Because you talked about watchers of angelic, but at the same time, you've also talked about UAPs and their behavior. So I would be interested to see where these themes are coming from. Are they some kind of like, they say that humanity, that we have this idea of God, like just because you're born a human, you already had that seed in your mind that there's something greater than yourself. So it's interesting. All of these themes kind of coalescing right here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. I don't know. Steve, what's your take on, since our topics tonight were the Djinn and the Watchers? You kind of just said what you think about the Watchers.
Well,
What
one,
What do you think about the Djinn?
yeah. Well,
Yes
I
or
mean,
no?
again, I think it goes back to the same thing we were just talking about. Could one with the same kind of theme say that the Jinn, whether good, bad, evil, in between, free spirited, all of those things, could they potentially be watchers of sorts as well?
Yeah. Well,
Right?
Jeff, my take on the Djinn,
Yeah.
no. Djinn, call them Djinn, genies, demons, whatever. Although I do believe you were right. There's different names. There's a lot of different names. There's a lot of different characteristics about each name. You can call it Djinn, you can call it genie, you can call it whatever, wizard, whatever you want to do. I think good, evil, demonic, angelic. Yes, I do believe there's angelic presences, there's demonic presences, and I think there is a load of names associated with each of them that have different characteristics. So that's my take. I just wanted to close this up,
I got
just so we didn't, anybody that watched this said, "Well, these guys never did answer what they were
you.
talking about."
Yeah.
Right.
That's my
Right.
view.
Yep.
Jinn,
Gotcha.
I could say no, but a Jinn equals angelic or demonic spirit, yes. And as far as the association with different names and different characteristics, I think you run the gamut. Could be anything. What Steve was getting into, UAPs, and what you were getting into, that's where we're going, kids. So that's next coming up. Stay tuned. But
Well, I'll keep this list.
watchers, like I said, Jeff, I'm a believer in signs. I really am, and I notice, I see them when they're really big and angry. And what Steve said about it's so obvious that things are stacked against us here on to get off this planet. I mean, it's basically built for us not to get off this planet. And, of course, that goes into a myriad of things we want to talk about. Moon landings, fake moon landings, us getting off the planet, going to Mars, blah, 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 blah. So it gets into a lot of things that we may or may not talk about. But I'm telling you, Jeff, I'm a believer in signs. And when Steve said that,
It
I
sparks
thought,
something.
how freaking obvious is that? And we're all debating all this other stuff. What we're doing, we're going to Mars, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. And, the aliens are just older people, versions of us, and they're already progressed to that point, and they have no noses and blah, 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 big eyes because they're in space. And that's just us from the past that have done it. And that explains the pyramids. And then you get into the warped, biggest term ever, Jeff, Steve, warp bubble. The warp bubble explains how they could lift the 40,000 tons of of rock onto the pyramids. But anyway, what my point is when Steve said that, Jeff, that was a sign, and I caught it when he said it, and I'm excited about it. And because if you look at it from that angle, if you look at it from Steve's angle that we are supposed to be here, it opens up a whole lot of philosophical discussions that we will entertain. So on tonight's subjects, Jeff, just to finalize my view, Djinn, I would say part of a demonic or angelic presence. Yes. Yes, they're as alive
Gotcha.
as anything else you could summons from this realm that we're in. And Jeff, we need to really, in the future, tie something together with your guys's, you guys have had ghost stories in the past that we've told, and then Steve's paranormal investigation. It would be really interesting, not just to spend all of our time trying to prove UAPs are aliens, but that there is an existence of something in the other realm that, like I said, Steve is versed in, and that we can narrow down. I mean, we need to cut the fat off everything, and we need to try to get down to the spirits. And where I fall back on too is like episode 2 where you guys were talking about your grandpa. Dude, that stuff is just totally interesting, and it's tied into everything because the universe is all of us. We are the universe. We're all tied in together, and everything has effect on each other. And I would like to talk about that too, Jeff. But as far as tonight, Djinn, angelic, and demonic spirit, watchers, yeah, I think there's something trying to keep us tied to this earth via, like I said, what Steve said. You guys need to look at the obvious that things are set up for you to stay on earth. So stop trying to get off.
Right.
There you
Well,
go.
I hope we did the subject some justice. We had great discussion tonight. So thank you, Wendell. Thank you, Steve, for researching and being here. And people out there, if you got any comments, please leave the comments below on this show. If you got some stories, leave them below, or you could just email us with any stories you have on either Watchers, Djinn, or any subject you'd like to reach out to us at buriedstories74@gmail.com. Until next time, thank you.